squeak of wet sneakers on marble stopped every conversation cold. A delivery girl stood trembling in the entrance of Seoul's most exclusive private club, rainwater pooling at her feet. Her reflective vest was soaked through. Her hands clutched a food container like it was the only thing keeping her upright. And every single person in that room knew she had just walked into the one place in the city where people disappeared for far less than interrupting dinner. But she wasn't looking at the armed guards flanking the entrance. She wasn't looking at the crystal chandeliers or the men in $10,000 suits. She was staring directly at Seo Jin-tae, the man they called the King of Seoul, the head of the Golden Dragon Syndicate, a mountain of a man whose gold chain caught the dim light, whose neck tattoo had become the last thing dozens of people ever saw. His dark eyes swept over her with the cold precision of someone calculating exactly how much trouble she was worth. And then she did something that made even his most loyal guards reach for their weapons. She walked straight toward him. I was told only you could open this," she whispered, extending the container with shaking hands. The silence in that room was suffocating. One nod from Jin-tae could end her life before she took another breath. Everyone knew it, including her. But what she had hidden inside that container, a crumpled note with words that would shatter 20 years of carefully built armor, was about to turn Seoul's most dangerous man into something he swore he'd never be again. If this story grabs you, make sure to like this video right now. Hit that subscribe button for Mafia Moonlight Tales and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Now let's get into it. It's a rain-soaked Friday night in Gangnam, 2025. The Black Orchid Club pulses with the kind of energy that only exists when power and money collide. Neon light bleeds through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in shades of electric blue and blood red. The air smells like imported cigars and expensive cologne. Conversations happen in hushed Korean, Mandarin, and Japanese, languages of empire builders conducting business over aged whiskey and carefully worded threats. This isn't the kind of place you stumble into by accident. This is Seo Jin-tae's throne room. Every server knows to keep their eyes down and their memories short. Every patron understands the unspoken hierarchy. You show respect. You speak when spoken to. And you never ever make Jin-tae lose face in front of his guests. Tonight, like every Friday for the past 8 years, Jin-tae sits at his private booth in the back, an elevated section that overlooks the entire club like a king surveying his kingdom. At 43, he's built an empire that controls half of Seoul's underground economy. His syndicate moves everything from high-end art to pharmaceutical shipments, all beneath a network of legitimate businesses so clean they could pass any audit. He's survived 3 attempted coups, 2 government investigations, and countless rivals who underestimated the man behind the gold chain and slicked-back hair. Because Seo Jin-tae understood one fundamental truth that kept him alive when so many others had fallen. Power is a blade with no handle. If you don't grip it tight enough, it cuts you. And he had gripped it tighter than anyone. No mercy, no sentiment, no weakness. Tonight's meeting is routine. His lieutenants sit around the table discussing territory expansions and revenue splits with the kind of surgical precision that made the Golden Dragon Syndicate so untouchable. Numbers flow, decisions are made. Problems are addressed without emotion clouding judgment. This is how Jin-tae operates. Cold, calculated, every move 3 steps ahead. But then, something happens that hasn't happened in 20 years. The club's heavy glass doors slide open, and a gust of cold rain sweeps inside. The music doesn't stop, but heads turn. The door shouldn't have opened, not without clearance from security, not during a private meeting, and then everyone sees what caused the disruption. A girl, maybe 22 or 23, stands just inside the entrance, absolutely drenched. Her delivery company jacket clings to her small frame. Her helmet is askew. Water drips from her hair onto the polished floor. She looks completely, utterly out of place, like a sparrow that flew into a den of wolves. The security guard at the entrance moves toward her immediately, his hand already gesturing for her to leave. But she doesn't run. She doesn't apologize. Instead, her eyes scan the club desperately, searching through the crowd, past the tables of criminals and businessmen, until they land on the elevated booth in the back, on Jintai, and something in her expression, pure, raw desperation, mixed with determination, makes her look less like prey and more like someone who has run out of every other option. Before security can grab her, she calls out in a voice that somehow cuts through the music and conversation. "I have a special order for Seo Jintai." The room doesn't go silent. That would be too dramatic, too obvious, but the energy shifts. Conversations pause mid-sentence. Eyes dart to the booth where Jintai sits, waiting to see how the king handles this unprecedented interruption. Jintai's expression doesn't change. He simply raises one hand, a small gesture that freezes his security in place. The girl takes that as permission and walks forward on trembling legs. Every step echoes with the squeak of wet sneakers on marble. She climbs the 3 stairs to his elevated section, and now everyone in the club can see just how terrified she is. Her hands shake as she holds out the insulated food container. Her breathing is short and rapid, but she doesn't look away from Jintai's eyes. "I was told only you could open this," she manages, her voice barely above a whisper. Jintai studies her for a long moment. His lieutenants watch silently, waiting for the order that will have her removed, or worse. One of them, Min Ho, his right-hand man for 6 years, leans forward slightly, his expression darkening. But Jintai simply reaches out and takes the container from her shaking hands. He opens it slowly. Inside, there's no food, just a folded piece of paper, slightly damp, with handwriting that looks rushed and desperate. Jintai unfolds it, and for the first time in 20 years, Seo Jintai's carefully controlled expression cracks, because taped to the note is a photograph. Faded, creased, 20 years old. It shows a younger version of himself, barely in his 20s, with his arm around a beautiful woman whose smile could light up the darkest room. A woman named Hana Lee, the woman he loved, the woman he abandoned to build his empire, the woman he told himself he had to leave behind because love was a weakness that would get them both killed. Beneath the photograph, the note reads, "My name is Ara Lee. I'm Hana's daughter, your daughter, and the man sitting to your right just ordered his men to kill me tonight. Please, I have nowhere else to go." Jintai's eyes snap up from the note to the delivery girl, Ara, standing in front of him, tears now streaming down her face. Then his gaze slides to Min Ho, his most trusted lieutenant, who is watching this scene unfold with an expression that confirms everything. And in that moment, Seo Jintai makes a choice that will cost him everything he's built. He stands. "Everyone out," he says quietly, "except her." The room empties in less than 30 seconds. No one argues. No one asks questions. When Seo Jintai gives an order, you follow it, or you become a cautionary tale, whispered in back alleys. His lieutenants file out silently. Though Minho pauses at the stairs, his jaw tight. His eyes linger on Ara for just a moment too long. Long enough for Jintae to catalogue the threat, to add it to the growing list of problems he'll need to solve before sunrise. Now, Jintae says, still standing, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Minho leaves. The heavy doors seal shut, and suddenly, the enormous club feels suffocating in its emptiness. The music has been cut. The lights remain dim. Somewhere in the building, Jintae knows, his security team is watching through cameras, hands on weapons, ready to flood the room at his signal. But for now, it's just him and the girl claiming to be his daughter. Ara stands frozen, her wet jacket dripping onto the pristine floor. She's stopped crying, but her breathing is still uneven, her eyes darting between Jintae and the exits like a trapped animal, calculating impossible odds. Smart, Jintae thinks distantly. She should be afraid, because the truth is, Seo Jintae hasn't stayed alive this long by trusting people. He's stayed alive by assuming everyone is lying, everyone has an agenda, and mercy is just another word for suicide in his world. 20 years ago, when he walked away from Hana Lee, he made a calculation. She was a university student with dreams of becoming a teacher. He was a street enforcer climbing the ranks of a syndicate that would either make him rich or dead by 30. Staying with her meant painting a target on her back. Leaving meant she could have the quiet, safe life he could never give her. He's told himself that story so many times it became gospel. But standing here now, looking at this girl with Hana's eyes and his own stubborn jawline, Jintae feels something he hasn't allowed himself to feel in 2 decades. Doubt. Sit, he says, gesturing to the booth. Ara hesitates, then slowly sinks into the leather seat across from him. Her hands fold in her lap, fingers twisting together nervously. Jintae sits back down, the note and photograph still on the table between them. He doesn't touch them again, doesn't need to. The image is already burned into his memory. Hana's smile, his own younger face, the stupid hope he used to carry that maybe he could have both power and love. You understand what you've done tonight, Jintae says quietly. It's not a question. Coming here, interrupting my meeting, making that accusation in front of my men. Ara nods, swallowing hard. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. His voice is flat, clinical. You chose to believe you could walk into the Black Orchid, hand me a note, and walk out alive. That's either very brave or very stupid. I chose to believe my mother wasn't a liar, Ara says, her voice gaining strength despite the fear in her eyes. She told me about you before she died. 3 months ago, cancer. She said, if I was ever in real trouble, the kind the police couldn't help with, I should find you. She said you were the only person in Seoul who could stop men like the ones hunting me now. Jintae's expression doesn't change, but something cold settles in his chest at the word died. Hana is gone. The woman he loved, the woman he sacrificed everything to protect, died while he sat in clubs like this one, building an empire on bones and blood money, and he never knew. Why is Minho hunting you? He asks. Ara's hands stop twisting. She looks up at him, and for the first time, he sees not fear, but calculation in her eyes. She's deciding how much to tell him, how much to trust. Finally, she speaks. Because I delivered the wrong package to the wrong person 3 weeks ago, and I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. 3 weeks earlier, Ara Lee had been a different person. Not happier exactly. Grief doesn't work that way. Doesn't simply evaporate because time passes. But she'd been functional. She woke up, put on her delivery company uniform, rode her electric scooter through Seoul's chaotic streets, and tried not to think about the empty apartment waiting for her at the end of each shift. The delivery job was supposed to be temporary, just something to pay bills while she figured out what to do with the teaching degree she'd earned right before her mother got sick. But temporary had a way of becoming permanent when you were alone, and every day felt like swimming through fog. That particular Wednesday started like any other. 43 deliveries scheduled. Lunch rush followed by the dinner surge. Her route took her through Gangnam, weaving between high-rises and luxury shops where a single handbag cost more than her monthly rent. The order that changed everything came through at 6:47 p.m. pickup from a restaurant called Golden Phoenix. Delivery to an address in the financial district, one of those buildings that's all dark glass and steel, the kind where security in the lobby looks at you like you're tracking mud on their pristine floors. Nothing unusual. Ara had delivered to that building dozens of times. She picked up the sealed bag, confirmed the order number, and headed out into the early evening rain that was just starting to fall. The restaurant owner, an older man who usually chatted with her about his grandchildren, handed over the bag without his typical smile. In fact, he wouldn't meet her eyes at all. She should have noticed, should have paid attention to the way his hands shook slightly as he gave her the order. But she was tired, and her mind was elsewhere, replaying the conversation she'd had with her landlord that morning about next month's rent. The delivery address led her to the 42nd floor. The elevator ride up felt longer than usual, her ears popping from the rapid ascent. When the doors opened, she found herself in a corridor that was quieter, darker than the usual corporate floors. No reception desk, no ambient office sounds, just a single door at the end of the hall, slightly ajar. Ara checked her phone. The app confirmed this was the right address. The customer had prepaid, including a generous tip. All she had to do was drop off the food and leave. She knocked anyway. Professional courtesy. No answer. "Delivery," she called out, pushing the door open wider. The office beyond was spacious, expensive, and empty. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering cityscape. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface clear, except for a laptop and a single glass of whiskey, ice still unmelted. And on the leather couch against the wall, a briefcase lay open. Ara shouldn't have looked. She knew that even then, some instinct screaming at her to just leave the food and go. But human curiosity is a terrible thing, and the briefcase was positioned so perfectly in her line of sight that not looking would have required effort. Inside, she saw stacks of Chinese yuan, more cash than she'd ever seen in her life, bundled and organized with the precision of someone who moved money like this regularly. But it was what lay on top of the cash that made her freeze. Photographs, police badges, documents with official seals, and a list of names, Korean names next to dollar amounts. Officials she recognized from news broadcasts, prosecutors, judges, police commissioners. She was staring at evidence of a bribery network that stretched through Seoul's entire legal system. Ara heard the voices in the hallway half a second too late. Back in the present, Jin-tae watches Ara's face as she recounts what happened next. How she'd grabbed her phone on pure instinct and snapped 3 photos before the voices in the hallway grew louder. How she'd shoved the delivery bag onto the desk and run for the emergency stairs, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. I didn't know what I'd seen, Ara says, her voice barely above a whisper. Not then. I just knew it was bad, that whoever owned that briefcase wouldn't want witnesses. Jintai leans back, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. His mind is already racing through the implications, connecting dots that form a picture he doesn't like. Minho handles our business relationships with city officials, he says quietly. Has for 3 years. Import licenses, zoning permits, making sure the right people look the other way when shipments come through Incheon. Ara nods. I figured that out later, when they started following me. They? 3 men. Different ones each time, but always 3. Watching my apartment, waiting outside the delivery company. My manager got a call 2 weeks ago saying I'd been stealing from customers. I was fired the next day. Her voice wavers slightly. I tried going to the police, filed a report about being stalked. The officer who took my statement seemed concerned, wrote everything down. Then he made a phone call, and suddenly my complaint was unfounded. Jintai's jaw tightens. One of the names on that list, he thinks. Has to be. So you ran, he says. I ran, Ara confirms. Stayed with friends, but I couldn't risk putting them in danger. Slept in a PC bang for 3 nights, a Jimjil bang for 2 more, but they kept finding me, like they had access to cameras everywhere I went. Because they probably did, Jintai thinks grimly. Minho has relationships with half the security companies in Seoul. Traffic cameras, building surveillance, even the subway system, all accessible with the right connections and the right bribes. Why not leave the city, he asks, though he suspects he knows the answer. Ara's laugh is hollow. I tried, bought a bus ticket to Busan. They were waiting at the terminal. She pulls up her sleeve, revealing a bruise that's faded to yellow-green around the edges. The man who grabbed me said I had 24 hours to hand over my phone and any copies I'd made. After that, she doesn't finish the sentence. Jintai looks down at the photograph again, at Hana's face, frozen in a moment of happiness from 2 decades ago. He thinks about the stories she might have told their daughter, the version of him she must have preserved in her memory, maybe softened by time, or maybe painfully honest about the monster he'd become. Either way, Hana had believed he was worth finding in a crisis. The thought sits uncomfortably in his chest. The note, he says, gesturing to the paper still on the table. How did you know to write it? How did you even know I'd be here tonight? Ara meets his eyes. My mother kept a journal, wrote in it until 2 days before she died. The last entry was dated March 15th. She wrote your name, this address, and Fridays, always Fridays. Then she wrote something else. What? She said, you were the most dangerous man she ever loved, and that if I ever needed someone who could fight monsters, I should find you. Ara's voice drops to barely a whisper. Because you were the biggest monster of them all. But you were her monster once, and she thought, maybe you'd remember that. Silence fills the empty club. Jintai feels something crack inside the armor he's spent 20 years building. Not breaking, not yet, but fracturing. A hairline split that lets in a sliver of light he's spent 2 decades trying to block out. He pulls out his phone. What are you doing? Ara asks. Making a call, Jintai says simply. If Minho wants you dead, he'll move tonight. He knows you're here, knows I've seen the note. He looks up at her. So we need to disappear before he gets the chance. The call Jintai makes isn't to Minho. It's to someone much older, much more valuable. A man named Park, who's been with the Golden Dragon Syndicate since Jintai was still collecting protection money from convenience stores. Park runs a network of informants that stretches through every level of Seoul's underworld, from street-level dealers to corporate boardrooms. If anyone knows what Minho is really planning, it's Park. "I need eyes on Minho," Jin-tae says, when Park answers. "Last 2 hours. Where he went after leaving the club. Who he called." Park doesn't ask questions. He never does. "Give me 3 minutes." Jin-tae ends the call and looks at Ara, who's watching him with an expression caught between hope and terror. "My security team," he says, anticipating her question. "They're loyal to me, not the syndicate. There's a difference." "Is there?" Ara asks quietly. It's a fair question. In Jin-tae's world, loyalty is a currency that changes value depending on who's offering the better price. He's seen men he trusted for years turn the moment someone waved enough cash or made the right threat. But Park is different. Park owes Jin-tae his life, literally. Jin-tae took a bullet meant for him 9 years ago during a deal gone wrong in Itaewon. That kind of debt doesn't expire. The phone buzzes. Jin-tae answers before the second ring. Minho made 4 calls, Park says without preamble. First to his personal crew, second to someone at the Seoul Metropolitan Police, third to a number registered to a burner phone, fourth, Park pauses, to your personal physician. Jin-tae's blood goes cold. "Dr. Choi?" "Asking about your schedule. Whether you'd mentioned feeling unwell lately. Whether you'd requested any private medical consultations." The pieces click together with sickening clarity. Minho isn't just trying to eliminate a witness. He's setting up something bigger, something that requires Jin-tae to be vulnerable, distracted, or better yet, dead. "He's planning a coup," Jin-tae says quietly. Ara's eyes widen. "What?" Jin-tae stands, his mind racing through scenarios, calculating probabilities. "Think about it. You stumble onto evidence that Minho's running an off-books bribery network. That's already a problem. He's skimming profits, building relationships I don't know about. But instead of killing you immediately, he drags it out, follows you, threatens you, gives you time to run." "I don't understand," Ara says, "because he wanted you to run here." Jin-tae's voice is sharp now, anger cutting through the careful control. "He knew about your mother, knew about me. Minho's been my right hand for 6 years. He has access to everything. Files I keep on potential leverage, including old surveillance photos from my past." The implication hits Ara like a physical blow. "He knew I'd come to you. He was counting on it. You show up, interrupt my meeting with a note claiming to be my daughter, making wild accusations against my most trusted lieutenant, in front of everyone." Jin-tae's jaw clenches. "It makes me look weak, sentimental, and in my world, weak leaders don't last long." "So this whole time," Ara's voice shakes, "I was just bait?" "You were bait," Jin-tae confirms. "But not the way you think. Minho doesn't just want you dead. He wants me compromised. If I ignore you, I look like a heartless bastard who abandons his own blood. My men start questioning my humanity. If I protect you, I look like I've gone soft, choosing family over business. Either way, I lose authority." Park's voice crackles through the phone, still on the line. "There's more. The burner phone he called. It pinged off a tower near the Banpo Bridge. That's Kim Sang-woo's territory," Jin-tae finishes grimly. Kim Sang-woo runs the Jade Serpent Syndicate, the Golden Dragon's primary rival for control of Seoul's southern districts. They've maintained an uneasy truce for 3 years, neither side willing to start a war that would cost more than it gained. But if Minho is talking to Kim's people, the truce is about to shatter. "He's going to frame me," Jin-tae says, the full picture crystallizing. "Make it look like I'm losing control. Then Kim moves in. There's chaos, and Minho steps up, as the voice of reason, the man who can negotiate peace, the new leader. Ara stands abruptly. Then we need to leave. Now. If this is a trap, the lights go out. Every single light in the Black Orchid Club cuts simultaneously, plunging them into absolute darkness. Jin-tae moves before Ara can scream. His hand finds her wrist in the darkness, grip firm but not painful, and he pulls her down behind the booth just as the first bullets punch through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Glass explodes inward in a cascade of glittering shards, the sound like 1,000 wind chimes shattering at once. "Stay low," Jin-tae hisses. His other hand is already moving, pulling a compact pistol from the holster beneath his jacket. It's a habit born from decades of survival. Never sit in a room without knowing every exit. Never trust a moment of peace. And never, ever, go anywhere unarmed. More gunfire erupts from multiple positions outside. Professional, coordinated. Minho's people, or maybe Kim's. At this point, it doesn't matter. What matters is the emergency exit 15 meters away, behind the bar. "Can you run?" Jin-tae asks. Ara nods, then realizes he can't see her in the darkness. "Yes." "Then run. Now." They move together, staying below the line of the windows. Jin-tae fires twice toward the entrance, not aiming to hit, just forcing whoever's coming through the door to think twice about rushing in. The muzzle flash illuminates the club in brief, strobing moments. Overturned furniture, bullet holes punching through leather, the emergency exit sign glowing red in the distance. They reach the bar. Jin-tae vaults over it with practiced ease, then pulls Ara after him. Behind them, footsteps echo through the club. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, searching. The emergency exit leads to a concrete stairwell that smells like cigarettes and desperation. Jin-tae takes the stairs 3 at a time, Ara struggling to keep pace behind him. Her wet sneakers slip on the smooth concrete, but she catches herself, keeps moving. They burst out onto a side street 2 blocks from the main entrance. Rain has intensified into a full downpour, turning the alley into a river of neon reflections and running water. Jin-tae's car, a black Genesis sedan, is parked 30 meters away, but between them and safety are 2 men in dark jackets, already turning toward the sound of the emergency door slamming open. Jin-tae doesn't hesitate. He fires once, clipping the first man in the shoulder. The second man raises his weapon, but Jin-tae is already moving, pulling Ara behind a dumpster as bullets spark off metal. Return fire forces the shooter to duck, and Jin-tae uses the moment to sprint for the car, dragging Ara with him. They're 5 meters away when a black SUV screeches around the corner, headlights blinding. "Plan B," Jin-tae mutters, changing direction. They plunge into the maze of Gangnam's back alleys, the arteries that run behind the glittering facades of luxury shops and high-rise apartments. Here, the city shows its real face. Narrow passages, barely wide enough for 2 people. Dumpsters overflowing with restaurant waste. Delivery bikes chained to rusting pipes. Jin-tae knows these alleys, learned them 20 years ago when he was still running packages for the syndicate, back when getting caught meant broken bones at best. That knowledge saves them now as he navigates the labyrinth with absolute certainty, taking turns that seem random but create distance from their pursuers. Behind them, shouts echo off concrete walls, footsteps splash through puddles. Ara's breathing is ragged, her pace flagging. Jin-tae can hear the exhaustion setting in, the adrenaline starting to fade into the crushing weight of fear and physical limits. "Almost there," he says, though he's not sure where there is yet. They break out onto a wider street, and Jin-tae spots Salvation, a pojangmacha, one of Seoul's ubiquitous tent restaurants, still open despite the late hour and rain. A handful of salarymen huddle inside, drinking soju and eating tteokbokki. Jintae pulls Ara inside, both of them soaked and breathing hard. The Ajuma running the place looks up, takes one look at Jintae's face. His gold chain, his neck tattoo, the gun barely concealed under his jacket, and her expression goes carefully neutral. 2 bowls of ramyeon, Jintae says, pulling out his phone. And we were never here. He slides a 50,000 won note across the plastic table. The Ajuma takes it without a word, turns back to her stove. They sit in the back corner of the pojangmacha, hidden behind a plastic curtain that does nothing to stop the cold rain from seeping in. The Ajuma brings 2 steaming bowls of ramyeon and disappears without making eye contact. Smart woman. Ara's hands wrap around the bowl, seeking warmth, but she doesn't eat. She just stares at Jintae with those eyes that are so much like Hana's, it physically hurts to look at them. You left her, Ara says finally. Not an accusation, just a statement of fact. Jintae nods slowly. I did. Why? It's the question he's been asking himself for 20 years. The question he's answered 1,000 different ways in his own mind, each justification feeling weaker than the last. Because I loved her, he says quietly. And in my world, love gets people killed. Ara's jaw tightens. That's not an answer. That's an excuse. She's right, and Jintae knows it. But he continues anyway, because she deserves the truth. Ugly as it is. I was 23. Your mother was 21. We met at a convenience store in Hongdae at 3 in the morning. She was studying for exams. He pauses, remembering. Collecting money from the owner. Protection payments. She saw me counting cash in the back office, and instead of being scared, she asked if I knew anything about 18th century literature. Despite everything, Ara's lips twitch slightly. That sounds like her. We started meeting there. Same time, 3 nights a week. She'd study, I'd finish my rounds, and we'd talk until sunrise. She knew what I was. I never lied about it. But she said she saw something in me worth saving. Jintae's voice drops. She was wrong. Was she? Ara asks. Jintae doesn't answer. Instead, he continues the story. 6 months in, I asked her to marry me, bought a ring with money I earned breaking a man's fingers for missing a loan payment. She said yes anyway. We had plans. Get married, move somewhere quiet, start over. I was going to leave the syndicate. He takes a breath, the memory sharp even after all these years. But my boss at the time, a man named Choi, he found out. Called me into his office and showed me photographs. Your mother leaving her university. Your mother at the convenience store. Your mother walking home, alone, at night, through empty streets. Jintae's hands clench into fists. He didn't threaten her directly. Didn't need to. The message was clear. You don't leave this life. And if you try, everyone you love pays the price. Ara's face has gone pale. So you left her to protect her. I left her to protect her, Jintae confirms. Broke things off. Told her I didn't love her, that she was just a distraction. Made sure she hated me enough to move on. Then I threw myself into the work. Became the thing Choi wanted. Ruthless, efficient, emotionless. Within 3 years, I'd climbed high enough to order Choi's own execution when he became a liability. Did it work? Ara asks bitterly. Did leaving her keep her safe? Jintae meets her eyes. She lived to 43, raised a daughter who became a teacher, died in a hospital bed instead of a ditch. So yes, it worked. She died alone, Ara says, her voice breaking. Except for me. No husband, no family, working 2 jobs to pay for my education. She never dated anyone else, never even tried. Do you know what she told me when I asked why? Jintai doesn't respond. She said some people only get one love in their lifetime, and hers had already happened. Tears streamed down Ara's face now, mixing with the rain. She spent 20 years loving a ghost, and you spent 20 years becoming a monster. For what? To keep her safe? She was never safe. She was just alone. The words hit harder than any bullet Jintai has ever taken. Because Ara is right. He built an empire on the lie that his sacrifice meant something, that walking away was noble, that becoming the king of Seoul was somehow protecting the woman he loved. But Hana died anyway, and he wasn't there. I'm sorry, Jintai says, and the words feel inadequate, pathetic. Ara wipes her eyes roughly. I don't want your apology. I want you to tell me. Was it worth it? Jintai looks down at his hands, at the scars across his knuckles, the expensive watch on his wrist, the blood he's spilled in the name of power. No, he says finally. It wasn't. The Pojangmacha's plastic curtain tears open with a violence that sends the Ajuma scrambling toward the back. Minho stands in the entrance, rain streaming off his shoulders, flanked by 4 men with guns drawn. His suit is immaculate despite the weather, his expression calm, almost disappointed, like a teacher who caught a student cheating on a test. Hyung-nim, Minho says, using the honorific that suddenly sounds like mockery. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Jintai doesn't reach for his weapon. Not yet. His gun is tucked against his spine, and the 4 men covering Minho would cut him down before he cleared leather. Instead, he stands slowly, positioning himself between Minho and Ara. 6 years, Jintai says quietly. I gave you everything. Territory, trust, a seat at my table. And this is how you repay it? Minho steps further inside, water dripping onto the worn linoleum. You gave me scraps from your empire and expected gratitude. I built those relationships with city officials myself, cultivated them, maintained them, and you took 60% of every payment while I did all the work. That's how it works, Jintai says. You're part of my organization. Your work is my work. Your organization. Minho laughs, the sound bitter. You mean your throne, your legend. Everything revolves around Seo Jintai, the man who clawed his way up from nothing, the king of Seoul. He spits the title like a curse. But kings get old, Hyung-nim. They get sentimental. They make mistakes. Jintai's jaw tightens. Like what? Protecting someone who came to me for help? Like believing that girl's story. Minho gestures toward Ara, who presses herself against the back wall. Did you even verify it? Run a DNA test? Check her mother's name against your records? Or did you just see a pretty face with a sad story and decide to play hero? The question lands like a punch, because Jintai knows the answer. He didn't verify anything, saw Hana's photograph, and made a choice based on emotion rather than logic. Exactly the kind of weakness that gets leaders killed. But looking at Ara now, seeing the terror in her eyes, mixed with a desperate hope that someone will finally protect her, Jintai realizes something crucial. He doesn't care if Minho is right. Verification, DNA tests, proof. None of it matters. Because whether Ara is his daughter or not, she's someone's daughter. Someone who loved her enough to tell her stories about a monster who might still have a shred of humanity left, and Minho is hunting her for the crime of witnessing his corruption. That's enough. Even if she's lying, Jintai says slowly, you still tried to kill her to cover up your side business. You still contacted Kim Sang-woo behind my back. You still orchestrated an attack on my club while I was inside. He takes a step forward. That's 3 acts of betrayal, Min-ho. 3 reasons I should put a bullet in your head right now. Min-ho's smile doesn't waver. You could try, but we both know how this ends. You're alone, young Nim. I have half the syndicate behind me. The men outside aren't just my personal crew, they're lieutenants who've been waiting for someone to finally challenge the great Seo Jintai. A coup, Jintai says. A revolution, Min-ho corrects. The Golden Dragon has been stuck in the past for too long. Your old-school methods, your refusal to expand into digital markets, your insistence on honor among thieves, it's all holding us back. Seoul is changing. We need a leader who understands that. Jintai glances at the men flanking Min-ho, recognizes 2 of them, Lee and Park, both soldiers he personally recruited years ago. Men he thought were loyal. The betrayal stings, but not as much as it should. Maybe he's been in this business too long. Maybe he's seen too many Judas kisses to be surprised anymore. So what's your play? Jintai asks. Kill me here? Make it look like Kim's people did it during the chaos? Nothing so crude. Min-ho pulls out his phone, shows Jintai the screen. It's a live feed from multiple cameras positioned around the Pojangmacha. I'm streaming this to every lieutenant in the organization. They're watching their king hide in a tent restaurant with some delivery girl, surrounded, outgunned, and out of options. When you surrender, when you kneel and acknowledge that your time is over, the transition will be peaceful. And if I don't? Min-ho's smile finally fades. Then you die a traitor who chose a stranger over his family. And the girl dies with you. Jintai looks at the phone screen, at the cameras broadcasting his moment of weakness to everyone who ever followed him. Then he does something Min-ho doesn't expect. He laughs. Not a bitter laugh or a desperate one. A genuine sound of amusement that echoes through the small tent restaurant and clearly throws Min-ho off balance. You think I became king by caring what other people thought? Jintai asks. You think I held power for 15 years because I was afraid of looking weak? He pulls out his own phone, dials a number, and puts it on speaker. Park's voice crackles through. Ready when you are. Do it, Jintai says. Somewhere across the city, servers activate. Files that Park has been compiling for months. Evidence of Min-ho's skimming, his unauthorized deals with the Jade Serpents, his secret bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, flood into every lieutenant's phone simultaneously. The same phones currently watching the live stream. Min-ho's face goes pale as his own phone starts buzzing with incoming messages. Did you really think I didn't know? Jintai asks quietly. I've known about your side business for 8 months. Let it continue, because I wanted to see how far you'd go, who you'd contact, which of my men would follow you. It's a bluff, mostly. Jintai suspected, but didn't have proof until tonight. But Min-ho doesn't know that. And in this moment, perception is everything. The difference between you and me, Jintai continues, is that you think power comes from fear, from making people believe you're untouchable. But real power, the kind that lasts, comes from making sure that even when they see you bleed, they still choose to follow. He looks directly at the camera on Min-ho's phone. I'm not surrendering. I'm not kneeling. And if you want my throne, Min-ho, you're going to have to kill me for it. Right here, right now, while everyone watches. The challenge hangs in the air. Min-ho's hand moves toward his jacket, but Jintai is faster. His gun clears his waistband and fires twice, not at Min-ho, but at the 2 guards flanking him. Lee takes a round to the shoulder. Park drops his weapon, clutching his leg. Then Jintai is moving. He crashes into Min-ho before the younger man can draw, and they go down in a tangle of limbs and overturned furniture. The remaining guards try to get a clear shot, but Jintae and Minho are too close, grappling on the wet floor. "Run!" Jintae shouts to Ara. She hesitates for half a second, then bolts through the back exit, the same direction the Ajumma disappeared moments ago. Minho gets his gun out, but Jintae slams his wrist against the metal table leg. The weapon skitters away. They fight like animals, trading brutal close-quarters blows that aren't about technique, but pure survival. Jintae takes an elbow to the jaw that makes his vision blur, delivers a knee to Minho's ribs that he feels crack. They're both bleeding now, both gasping for air. The remaining guards circle, weapons raised but useless. Minho is in the way, and shooting now might hit their future boss. "Call them off," Jintae hisses, forearm across Minho's throat. "End this." Minho's face is turning purple, but his eyes are wild with rage and desperation. "Never. You're finished, old man." Jintae increases the pressure. He could kill Minho right now. End the threat. Restore order through violence, the way he always has. But Ara's words echo in his mind. Was it worth it? 20 years of being a monster. 20 years of choosing power over everything else. And where did it leave him? Alone in a tent restaurant, fighting his own lieutenant, while the woman he loved died without him. Jintae makes a choice. He releases Minho's throat, stands, and raises his hands. "You win," he says clearly, knowing the cameras are still recording. "The golden dragon is yours," but the girl walks away. That's the price. Minho coughs, gasping for air. "What?" "You heard me. Take the syndicate. Take everything I built." But Ara Lee disappears, and no one, not you, not Kim, not anyone in this organization, ever touches her again. Minho stares at him, like he's insane. "You're giving up your empire for some delivery girl?" Jintae looks at the camera one last time. "I'm choosing what I should have chosen 20 years ago." 6 months later, Ara Lee stands in front of a classroom of 32 middle school students who care more about their phones than Korean literature. She's explaining a passage from the Cloud Dream of the Nine when a student in the back raises his hand and asks why anyone should care about a book written 300 years ago. It's a fair question, one she would have asked herself not long ago when her biggest concern was delivering food on time. Now, she tells them about stories that survive because they contain truths that don't expire, about characters who make impossible choices and live with the consequences, about redemption being possible even when you think you've gone too far. The students don't fully understand, but a few of them are listening. That's enough. After class, Ara walks through the halls of Hannam Middle School, past bulletin boards, advertising clubs, and upcoming festivals. The scholarship that brought her here arrived anonymously 4 months ago. Full tuition for a graduate teaching program, plus a living stipend, generous enough that she could afford a small studio apartment in a safe neighborhood. The letter accompanying it said only, "Your mother would be proud." Ara knows who sent it, even though there's no name attached, no return address. The same way she knows that the 3 men who followed her for weeks simply disappeared after that night in Gangnam. The same way she knows her apartment building suddenly has better security than most government facilities. She's being watched, protected, but from a distance that feels both comforting and achingly sad. Sometimes late at night, she thinks about searching for Jintae, about trying to find the man who gave up everything to keep her safe. But something stops her, an understanding that maybe some debts aren't meant to be repaid, that some sacrifices need to be honored by living well, not by looking back. Across the city, in a neighborhood where tourists never venture and locals know better than to ask questions, a man with new scars and old regrets sits in a small apartment above a bookstore. Seo Jintai, though he doesn't use that name anymore, looks nothing like the king of Seoul. His gold chain is gone, sold months ago. The expensive suits have been replaced with simple clothes from discount stores. The neck tattoo is covered by the high collar of a jacket he wears even in warm weather. He works at the bookstore now, shelving books and helping customers find obscure titles. The owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Cho, never asks about his past. Maybe she knows, maybe she doesn't care. Either way, she pays him in cash and doesn't require identification. It's a small life, a quiet one. Some days, Jintai takes the subway across the city and stands outside Ara's school during dismissal. He keeps his distance, just another anonymous face in the Seoul crowds, watches her laugh with colleagues, sees her help a struggling student with their backpack, sees her alive. The Golden Dragon Syndicate still exists, now under Minho's leadership. They operate differently, more digital, more aggressive, less concerned with the old codes Jintai tried to maintain. Sometimes he hears stories about territorial disputes, about violence spilling into civilian areas, and he feels a pang of something that might be regret or might be relief. Not his problem anymore. Park visits once a month, always at night, always checking if Jintai needs anything. The answer is always no. Park brings news anyway. Who's rising, who's fallen, which alliances have shifted. Jintai listens but doesn't comment. That world belongs to someone else now. Tonight, Park brings different news. The girl, he says, settling into the worn chair across from Jintai. She's been asking about her mother, going through old belongings. Jintai's chest tightens. And found letters, ones Johanna wrote but never sent. Park pulls out an envelope, places it on the small table between them. Thought you should know. The last one is dated a week before she died. Jintai stares at the envelope like it might explode. I'll leave it here, Park says, standing. At the door, he pauses. For what it's worth, Hyung-nim, I think you made the right choice. After Park leaves, Jintai sits alone in the darkness for a long time before reaching for the letter. Inside, Hana's handwriting, still elegant despite the tremor of illness, fills 3 pages. He reads her words about Ara, about the life they built together, about teaching their daughter to be brave and kind and stubborn, about the dreams she had that didn't come true and the ones that did anyway. And at the end, a passage that breaks something in Jintai's carefully constructed walls. I told Ara about you tonight. The real you, not the monster everyone fears. I told her about the boy who quoted poetry badly and bought me convenience store coffee at 3 a.m. The man who cried when he proposed. The person I loved before the world convinced you that love was weakness. I don't know if she'll ever meet you. Part of me hopes she won't. You've become dangerous, and I want her safe. But part of me hopes that if she ever needs you, you'll remember that being strong doesn't mean being alone. You were my biggest mistake and my greatest love, and I would make the same choice again, even knowing how it ends. Thank you for our daughter. Thank you for staying away. Thank you for whatever sacrifice you made that kept us alive all these years. I forgive you. Now, forgive yourself. Jintai folds the letter carefully, places it back in the envelope. Through the window, Seoul glitters with 1,000,000 lights, a city of 8 million stories, most of which will never be told. Somewhere out there, Ara is probably grading papers or reading before bed. living the quiet, safe life her mother wanted for her, the life Jintai finally chose to protect, even if it cost him everything else. He doesn't feel like a king anymore, but for the first time in 20 years, sitting in a small apartment above a bookstore with a letter from a ghost, Seo Jintai feels something close to peace. And that, he thinks, might be worth more than any throne.